Been in here. You just haven't been behind the table.
I just haven't been behind the table.
All right. Welcome to the General Affairs Committee. My name is John Lowe and I represent District 37. I am chair of this committee and will be conducting today's hearing. Today we'll be hearing one appointment, two constitutional amendments, and 3 bills. If you wish to testify in person on any of the appointments before us, we ask that you fill out one of the green sheets of paper. They are over next to this pillar over here. They are located at the table over there. If you are here and do not wish to testify, but wish to state your support or opposition for any of the appointments before us, we ask you to fill out the sign-in sheet. And if you wish, if you do testify, please hand in your sheet to the committee clerk as you come up right here. Please begin your testimony by stating and spelling your full name for the record, which is very important for our transcribers. The appointee and introducer will be given an opportunity to open. Then we will hear the proponents, opponents, and neutral testimony for the appointee and each bill. We ask you to listen very carefully and not try to be very repetitive. We do use the light system in the General Affairs Committee. I'm looking, I think we'll do a 3-minute on each bill. Each testifier is afforded the 3 minutes to testify. The green light signifies your start. When the light turns to yellow, you have 1 minute remaining for you to conclude your remarks. I will try to give you a heads up because a lot of you read testimony and you're not looking up the light. When the red light comes on, your time has expired, and we will open up the committee to any questions that we have for you. At this time, we'd like everyone to turn off and silence their cell phones or any other electronic devices. Or anything else that makes noise. So you may see members referencing their iPads or phones or other electronic devices. I assure you, they are researching matters before us. If you have a prepared statement, an exhibit, or anything you would like to have distributed to the committee members, we ask that you provide 10 copies to our committee clerk. If you have 10 copies, if you don't have 10 copies, don't worry, provide what you have to the committee clerk. We can make copies and distribute them to the committee. With that, we will proceed to the introduction of our members, starting at my right with John Kavanaugh.
Senator John Kavanaugh, District 9, Midtown, Omaha.
Tom Brewer, District 43, 11 counties of western Nebraska.
Jana Hughes, District 24, Seward, York, Polk, and a little bit of Butler County.
Brian Harden, District 48, Banner, Kimball, Scottsbluff counties.
Rick Holcroft, District 36, West and South Sarpy County.
Senator Hughes is our vice chair of our committee. Lori Holman is our committee counsel. And Andrew Shelburne is our committee clerk. And we have a representative from the clerk's office today to help us as our pages are short in number. Don't be nervous. We have all sat in that chair before, and we are just like your neighbors, so don't be nervous about coming up there. With that, good afternoon, and I'd like to invite Janell Beveridge up. And please take the seat and welcome to our committee.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for making the drive in today.
Thank you.
Please begin.
Janell Beveridge, Janell, capital Veridge. And I'm here concerning the reappointment on the Nebraska State Racing and Gaming Commission. And I'd just like to say I'm willing and happy to do this. I've been on the commission before, and I know a lot about it. I have a little bit of seniority, and with all the changes coming about, especially with some changes in western Nebraska, about 20 miles from my front door, I feel I can bring needed expertise and experience. And I don't know what else.
Okay. Thank you. How long have you served on the Racing and Gaming Commission? And
How long?
yeah, how long?
28 years. This will be 28.
Okay. So you have.
So
some-
I started, I was appointed when, back in the Ben Nelson years, just after Exarban closed, which was very game-changing to the racing industry. And I filled out a 3-month term for a member that couldn't finish his term. And then they liked what I did, so I've been reappointed since. And we've gone from a 3-person commission to a 5-person commission, and now we're 7. So things are changing. And I'm happy to serve. I have a little experience. My family, I didn't, but my grandparents raced racehorses, and that was the original intent, what my interest is, and in keeping that industry alive for the agricultural factor. And I was a bank president and owner for 20 years, so I brought a little bit of that expertise to it. And I very much support the racing industry.
How has the gaming portion changed things in the commission?
It's changed very much to the fact that racing almost went away. It was without the Exarban market and the people breeding horses and getting the full fields, and we did everything we could to keep it alive. And it actually was on a comeback. The people were starting to go again. The economy was letting them. They found social, not just betting and gambling, but social experience with going to the tracks and having fun. Families were going. And then the state voted in the gaming and tied it to the already existing gaming, which were the racetracks. And that is why they're combined or together. And so as far as changing it, it's just massively increased our staffing and expertise, and we went from like a 3-person staff to possibly 18 with all the compliance and legalities and attorney and everything, all the things that are brought to us, to our knowledge. So they do all the legwork, and we sit up there and do what you guys are doing at our meetings. So yes, it's changed it drastically, and hopefully bring some relief to some of our tax issues in the state, which is the purpose.
Yeah, Senator Hughes.
That's okay. It's summer. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for 28 years of service. That's impressive. Just in your opinion, do you think
This could be my last Olympics. We don't know.
I guess I should ask that. Is it a 4-year term or
Yeah.
Okay, 4-year term. Do you think that with the casinos coming in, do you really think that's been very helpful for the racing and the horse racing industry? I mean, have you seen the success from this so far, or is it still out there to be determined?
I think it has seen success. And it's just in the new stages.
Yes.
I mean, they're not even fully, they're just starting.
Yeah.
And yes, it is bringing more people. There's more thoroughbreds, Nebraska thoroughbreds being raised now. They're starting to restock the horses. And yes, it has helped.
Thank you.
Senator Brewer.
Thanks for all of your service. Now, where's home for you?
Paxton,
Paxton.
Ole's Big Game Bar.
Everyone knows Ole's. So if we take a look at where things are right now, depending on how today turns out, we're going to add more to your plate. The issue that I get from Western Nebraska from law folks is somewhere west of Grand Island and Kearney, there should be a racetrack. How do you feel about that?
I think that it is, and the track that is out there is an existing license, so is grandfathered in. It's not a new license. Let it be clear there. We just didn't create one. It's a transfer from Adams County to Keith County. But it was one of the 6 existing licenses. So yeah, I think it's great because they're going to be their plan is to be a quarter horse track. And it'll give the Western Nebraska a draw. It'll also draw from the states around us. And I was not aware, I'm kind of aware, but I was not aware until all of this came in front of us on the commission that there was such a big following of the quarter horse industry and the racing industry. There's down in New Mexico and Oklahoma and Kansas and all these other places, they have all this racing. And I believe back in the day, I might have been taking my grandparents to these races, but I think Broken Bow had a track and Madison and some of those other ones. But quarter horse racing hasn't been in Nebraska except for the Hastings one race a year. And I think out there, there's a real interest in it. I see a real interest in it. I see towns wanting them to come to help their community, their county. There's negatives to it too. There's going to be opposition, but the revenue is real.
And if say it was to be in Ogallala, can we draw from Colorado?
Yes. I will go out and say yes. You're going to draw from everybody coming down that interstate, one thing. But there's a lot of Colorado coming to the lake.
True.
And there's a lot of them staying there year round. And unless you hunt geese, there's not a whole lot out there to do in the winter.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Are there any other questions? Ms. Beveridge? Seeing none, thank you very much, and thank you for coming down. And we'll see if anybody is here to support you.
Thank you very much.
Ouch.
Well,
It's
I
fine
know
if there's
that.
nobody.
I will now ask for proponents for Ms. Beveridge. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any in the neutral? All right, thank you very much, and we will consider your appointment. With that, we will move on to LR 3CA with Senator Bostar.
Yeah. Trying to figure out the difference between this.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Lowe, members of the General Affairs Committee. My name is Elliot Bostar. For the record, that's ELIOTBOSTAR, and represent Legislative District 29. Here today to present LR 3CA, a constitutional amendment to allow online mobile sports betting. In 2020, Nebraska voters overwhelmingly approved expanded gambling through a ballot measure. LR 3CA will again give voters a chance to weigh in to approve mobile sports betting and utilize the economic benefits of regulated gaming. Nebraska is currently missing out on a $1.6 billion state industry and $32 million in annual tax revenue, which instead goes to neighboring states like Iowa, Colorado, Kansas, and Wyoming. Legalizing online mobile sports betting through LR3CA could significantly boost state revenues dedicated to the Property Tax Credit Fund, addressing the burden of high property taxes. Thousands of Nebraskans are already crossing state lines each month to bet on sports, contributing to neighboring economies, with the majority of those bets going to Iowa. According to a recent study conducted by GeoComply between January 1 and July 1 of this year, there were over 64,000 active individual mobile sports wagering accounts in Nebraska, with over 18,000 crossings into Iowa during football season alone. The demand for mobile sports betting is clear, and it's in our best interest to regulate and benefit from it. Nebraska's property taxes are among the highest in the nation, heavily impacting homeowners, farmers, and small business owners. Directing revenues from online mobile sports betting to the Property Tax Credit Fund can provide much-needed relief. This is an opportunity to create a new source of tax revenue for property tax relief. In fact, Nebraskans are already in favor of the measure. Almost 60% of voters support legalizing mobile sports betting, especially when they know it would generate $32 million annually for state revenue. Support increases to 65% when the revenue is dedicated to property tax relief. LR3CA promises to increase state revenue and help the property tax burden. I urge you to support LR3CA and give Nebraskans the opportunity to vote on this important issue. And I would be happy to answer any initial questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Senator Bostar. Senator Holcroft.
Thank you, Chairman Lowe. You mentioned 60% support mobile. Where, based on what, survey?
Yes.
Whose survey?
I actually think it got some media attention too when it came out. It was a GPS poll, which I believe is Guidant Polling and Strategies, conducted June 24th to 26th of this year.
And what is that organization? I mean, what's its background?
It's a polling firm. It's a firm that does polling.
Okay.
I believe that's the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Holcroft. Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so here's our dilemma is we're trying to figure out how to solve the property tax problem. You've been a part of some of the work that went into developing LB1.
Yes.
Our challenge with LB1, obviously, from yesterday's testimony is that no matter how you move things, you're going to gore someone's ox out of the deal, and someone's pissed. And if someone's pissed about this part of it, then they're against the whole plan. Now, we know that we could tweak this plan, but as you tweak the plan, what happens in there, someone else gets pissed off on the other side of things. And then pretty soon, everybody's mad at everybody, and you're not moving forward with any ideas on how to fix property tax relief. The other part of this is there's such a focus on fixing property tax that, short of public hangings, I'm not sure what's going to come out of this if we don't come up with a solution.
Hopefully not that one.
Well, hopefully not that one, but I think there's probably some that might do it. Anyway, our situation here is you found a source for revenue where we're not taking a slice of someone else's part of the budget or whatever they're doing that we're going to take money from and move to. My concern is it sustainable? And then what are the negative effects of it? And that'll be my first question. If you want to go ahead and jump in that, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah. Is it sustainable? I think we're seeing across the country that it is. There's from the looks of things, tremendous growth within this sector. So all indications point to a fairly robust amount of revenue. Are there negatives? Of course there are. There are folks who struggle with gambling addiction. It can be extremely disruptive and destructive to their livelihoods. There's no question about that. What I would say to that, though, is folks are already doing it in a number of ways. They're crossing state lines, or they're circumventing the geolocation technology in order to make it appear that they're somewhere they aren't. Or they're accessing underground, unregulated betting markets or foreign betting markets. These are all very popular. So a significant share, I believe, of those who want to participate in sports gambling are already doing so. We're already absorbing the societal and social costs of having a gambling population that has access to gambling at their fingertips. We already are. We're just not getting any of the benefit, the economic benefit, the resources along with it. We're giving that away. We're giving that away to our neighboring states, to Iowa in particular. And so, you know, when everyone asks, well, how can Iowa, who was at 399, we lowered our income taxes to try to match them, and now they're going to go even further down, and their property taxes are already lower than ours? How are they able to do those kind of things? Well, part of it is Nebraska is giving them a tremendous amount of money. I think we should keep that money. I think we should use that money to lower property taxes, and I think we should use that money also to help provide more revenue into the programs to help support folks who are struggling with gaming challenges and addictions.
All right, so following up on your point there, is there, because it's a CA, it doesn't break out the percentages that would go toward different pots, but is it LB 13 does?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll shift fire when that comes up. All right, that's all I got for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Senator Cavan.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here, Senator Bostar. So to kind of go off Senator Brewer, just talking about, this is a CA, which means it has to go for vote of the people, has to get 50% plus one, I think. Is that still right?
Still right.
Well, there's a lot of conversation about changing voting limits on certain things, but I think that's where we're still at on constitutional amendments. As of right now, it wouldn't be on the ballot in November. So why are we talking about this right now?
So right within the statutory piece of this sort of pair, which is the legislative bill that will come up after this, there is a tweak to the timeline that would allow the CA to be placed on the ballot this November. And I think we're talking about this now because, to some extent, time is of the essence. The governor had a press conference because a week ago now, maybe a little bit more. Time flies when you're in special session. And the governor had indicated his support for this particular initiative next session, which, I think is great. But the reason we should do it now and not later, especially if we believe this is something the state is going to put to the people, is the difference in time between having it on the November ballot this year versus November ballot 2 years from now is estimated to be $100 million to the state of Nebraska. So if we think this is something that's going to happen, all we're doing by delaying is sending more Nebraskans money to other states instead of using it to help the folks right here in our constituencies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cavan. There's something whirling around over here with Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, now earlier you mentioned 32 million, or did you?
Yes, so
that's initially what you would anticipate being the effect of it, but then over a year it becomes 100 million. Help me thin that out.
So it's the difference of it's 2.5 years.
Oh, okay.
Is where that adds up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. You mentioned geofencing
Yes,
and that people are able to get around geofencing.
correct.
So are you saying geofencing isn't stable and we shouldn't pass legislation with geofencing in if people are able to get around it?
What I'm saying is, I think that, I think the industry will probably tell you that it's very effective. And I think it is very effective, but it's certainly not perfect. I personally know people who bet on sports from their living rooms in Lincoln, on the mainstream apps. It's not perfect. But I think that there's been a lot of investment put into trying to enhance those systems, trying to provide that safety, to ensure that people aren't betting where they're not supposed to. But it's like anything. We create a technological barrier and people find a way around it. I think it stops some people. I don't think it stops everyone.
Thank you. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman Lowe. What is our age limit then on, is it 21 for this as well, for kids?
This doesn't.
This won't have anything, but then we'll set rules on it going forward.
This isn't changing anything on that front. As far as.
What would you anticipate, like, is that your LB 13 then? Or you don't set anything in that?
Don't.
When would that come out? When would we discuss ages and?
Whenever the good folks of the General Affairs Committee would deem appropriate.
The stuff I read says online gaming is getting younger and younger kids gambling, right?
Yeah.
I have an 18-year-old son, and I know a lot of his friends even do it. So clearly they're getting around something to do it here in the state of Nebraska.
I mean, and it's not just the main. Kids right now can go online and log into an Irish gaming website and place bets and transfer money around. I mean, it's
right.
We can control the things we can control, and in a very, very interconnected digital society, there are limits on our abilities to prevent people from accessing things that we don't want them to. So even if we got to a point where we said, you know what, the geofencing is perfect, no one can get past it, that doesn't actually solve the problem, because we're only regulating the folks that we can regulate. But accessing a foreign betting website, we don't have that reach. And they don't care that our young people are accessing it. They have no incentive to try to prevent that from happening. Or unregulated right here in the US, right? There are places that there's a lot of money to be made. And so they're willing to take the risks of operating an illegal operation just so that they can try to capture some of that. Because people will go there. You know, we are incentivizing the black market by not allowing a conduit for people to participate in a regulated environment. What do we expect is going to happen?
Right. Thank you, Senator Hughes. The wisdom of my legal aid has just notified me that gambling is 21, no matter what.
Great.
Legal age.
I'll be honest with you. I don't gamble. But I'll say this because we're going to hear from folks in this hearing. I don't fault anyone who is opposed to gambling, who thinks that there are problems with, who thinks it's bad. I don't fault anyone for having that opinion. Because there are challenges, there are issues. It can be hurtful to people. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone of that. I'm just, Nebraskans are already doing it. The big hurdle was casinos. right? It's hard to circumvent our laws and get a casino experience, right? As soon as casinos became legal, the brick and mortar is what's tough. The digital stuff, it's online sports betting. Leaving out just this piece doesn't make any sense to me. We're already here. And we're already incurring the costs. People are already struggling with this. And it can be absolutely tragic. But it's already happening. And the folks who are the most motivated to participate in online sports betting, and frankly, the folks who are suffering with a level of addiction in this, do we really think that our current setup is keeping them from participating? I mean, this is the population that absolutely is participating. So let's get some of this economic benefit to our state, including getting more resources in to help folks who need it. That's why I support this. Anyway, I appreciate your attention.
Thank you. And since you brought it up with the brick and mortar and everything else, do you see that if we pass this LR and the LB 13, that becomes a slippery slope then? Because we just passed gambling a couple of years back, and now we're passing gambling, and that gambling is in 6 places across our state.
Yeah.
And now we're opening up gambling to anywhere in our state, that somebody could then say, well, we're already doing it. Let's open up 6 more casinos dispersed out through the state, not on horse tracks.
Yeah, I suppose that's a fair question. I think the nature of brick and mortar is the difference between what we're talking about here with this and that, right? If you don't have access to a brick and mortar casino, you're not going to a brick and mortar casino, right? And so I think there is a fair argument to be made that by limiting the number of casinos, you are placing those limits on the population. Having a limit, a restriction placed on an online activity doesn't actually provide that limit, right? And so I think, to me, that's how I see this very differently. Whether it's slippery, I'll tell you right now, I would not support adding any more casinos to the state. I've got another 4 years left here. I promise you, there is at no point in time that I will support that.
How about online casinos?
I don't.
Digital.
So this is where we get into a little bit of my unfamiliarity, right? Because I'm not a gambler. So I am not an expert in all of the opportunities that are out there. I know what my friends do, particularly around sports betting. I've had the opportunity to look into it because of other legislation. But as far as online casinos and things like that, I don't know what that really looks like. I can tell you that doesn't sound like something that I think we should do. I think we're on an okay path. I think the people overwhelmingly wanted this. They wanted access to gaming. They've gotten it from the brick and mortar side in a limited way. And I think that that's good. I think it matches what the people asked for. And then I think this is really following up on just what an overwhelming number of people are already doing, that we're just leaving resources on the table. Not even on the table. We're giving it away.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to follow up so that we have it correct. In order for LR3CA to do what you perceive it needs to do, it needs LB 13 as a part of it.
So if we passed LR3CA without LB13, it would go on the ballot, but it would go on the ballot in 2 years. The LB just lets us, part of what that LB does is lets us get it on the ballot this year so that we can not wait on collecting that revenue.
I just needed that clarified so that we didn't unintentionally mess up what your vision is on this.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Bostar.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Will you be sticking around to close?
Absolutely.
We're more fun than revenue.
You know what?
Are we though?
You are right.
Thank you. We'll now take opponents or proponents. Are there proponents?
Look, I should get a place down there.
Go ahead.
Oh, my name is Lance Morgan, and from Winnebago, Nebraska. And I'm the CEO of Ho-Chunk and also Warhorse. And obviously, we're the person.
Could you please spell your name?
Oh,
Mr. Morgan?
LANCEMORGAN. I didn't know there was going to be a test. Now, obviously, we're the group that did the casino gambling initiative, and it passed with 69%. So there was support for that. When we did this, sports betting, when we started it, sports betting really wasn't legal in the United States, only in like a couple of states. Since then, it obviously has become legal, and we have it here. And mobile sports betting is legal in 30 states, and I think there are 8 more who are considering it at this time. And we certainly didn't do this with mobile sports betting in mind, but everywhere I go, people ask me about it. Especially in rural areas, and I live in a rural area because they don't necessarily have access to one of the gaming facilities. They want to be able to do it on their phone, or they're already doing it. I just go around asking people they support this or not, and my neighbor said he certainly does, because then last fall at a football party, all his friends left at halftime to go cross the river in Sioux City to make a bet. And so it's clearly already happening. In Iowa, when they went to mobile sports betting, it grew by tenfold, and we extrapolated that number. We're about 2/3 of the population. That's where we came up with the 1.6 billion industry. That turns out to about 150 million revenue, and that's about the tax rate is 20%. That's where the 32 million comes in. It's 150 to 160 million. There were 4 million attempts to try to bet that were blocked by geofencing last year in the state, 4 million, which tells you people like it. 6 months ago, we did a poll to see whether or not we would do a study or to see if we can get it on the ballot through signature gathering. 58% of the people supported it if it related to property tax relief. When this came up, when the governor said he was going to push for a special session, we thought, well, maybe this is another opportunity, because we decided not to do the signature gathering effort because we're focused on growing the facilities. And we did another poll that actually we didn't, the gaming industry did, the sports gaming industry, and it was 65%. I'll finish up here. The thing we like, 65% now support it. So it's grown a lot. There's this is new tax revenue. It's not a shift, although we're shifting from Iowa, which is going to lose $100 million. The governor told me of Iowa that they're going to lose $100 million to Nebraska casinos in tax revenue, and that's what they're anticipating. It'll also shift from illegal bookmaking operations. And I want to make one thing super, super clear. We do not support online casinos. I think that I think Senator Bostar said we're on the right path, and I think that's right. I think that online casinos would be a step too far, I think, for the average Nebraskan, and I don't support that in any way. And I would end with, I would urge democracy to take place. People, give them a chance to vote on it. And then I think that politically this may not be palatable, but letting people decide is the American way. So
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I appreciate you coming down here. And I wish you were coming down because I'm having a beef processed up in Wisner, and you could have brought it down to me, and I just could have taken it home. I have to go up there tomorrow. Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, for some of us that have been around this for a while, we have got a pretty good handle on what we did in order to move things to where it is now. But because unless you're involved with it, it's hard to have oversight to understand where things are. If you were to kind of give us a Reader's Digest version of where are we at with casinos, where are we at with what was passed and what we were hoping for?
So the horse tracks, the 6 horse tracks were authorized for gaming. We're involved in Omaha, Lincoln, and South Sioux City. Columbus is now open, a small facility. Fauner Park in Grand Island has a temporary facility, and they're building the larger one. We have a temporary one open in Lincoln. We're going to double the size of that November 1. And next Tuesday, the phase 1 of Omaha will open. And next April, the next one, the larger phase of Omaha will open. And we will start construction on the new track in South Sioux City next year. South Sioux City is taking a little bit of a backseat because Omaha and Lincoln are just so much bigger, but that will eventually get done too. And Hastings has moved to Okalala, which makes sense, I think, to spread it out from the east and central part of Nebraska to western Nebraska. And sports betting is legal, and I think it's pretty popular. In Omaha, it's in a double wide trailer, and a lot of people show up just to do that. So, and they say they'd rather go there than go to Iowa.
So then Omaha is going to morph and change how in the next year?
Well, next Tuesday, it's going to open, and it'll be a pretty sizable facility, but we'll have remodeled the existing Horseman Park facility, but we're more than doubling the size of it with an addition that's under construction now. So it'll be a full-blown casino. It'll have some minimal amenities at this stage, but the next phase will have expanded gaming, more offices, and restaurants and entertainment and that sort of thing. And the Horsemen are also expanding their operation there. There are landlords. They take a portion of the gaming revenue as rent, and they push that into horse racing. So we don't really have anything to do with that, but with their goal is to drive more racing and put more money into the rural parts of Nebraska. And we're 100% supportive of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Senator Holcroft.
Thank you, Chairman Lowe. Thank you for coming in. As we've heard, the gambling age in Nebraska is 21. And obviously, if you go to a brick and mortar casino, they're going to ask you for some kind of identification. If you're using a mobile app at home, how do you guarantee that end user is a 21-year-old or older?
Good question.
We've contracted with DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM, and they have pretty rigorous, I guess I don't know the details, but they're very focused on where you are and how old you are and having to prove it. They have a lot of liability issues at stake, and our conversations with, and they can speak for themselves on this, with the Nebraska Racing Gaming Commission, they're very focused on that type of safety and protecting the integrity of gaming in Nebraska. So I'm not an IT expert, but I know that the companies are very focused on making sure that they don't have liability alleging on people gambling.
And to follow up, if you're in a casino, typically you can't bring in your 15-year-old and let him play a game in the casino. But obviously at home, you could log in and pass off so you see where I'm going here. I think you lose some of the security of a brick and mortar casino when you move it to your iPhone.
Well, I certainly agree that's a possibility. It seems like a real parenting challenge to me, though, if your 15-year-old's making a bet. I guess I can't say that bad things can never happen. I think that putting some parameters around it and regulating it probably makes more sense than leaving it as the Wild West as what's going on right now.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Harden.
To follow up on Senator Brewer's comments about summarizing for us, can you tell me a little bit more about the horses, the stock, where they come from? Do they all have to originate from Nebraska? Where does that sit, whether it's thoroughbred or quarter horse racing?
I have experts behind me, but I do know that a certain number of races have to happen with Nebraska thoroughbred stock. And I think that there's been an effort to increase the amount of thoroughbreds being born in this state in anticipation of some of the increased gaming dollars coming in. We anticipate the horsemen alone will get somewhere around $20 million to pump into the system, which includes building facilities and supporting races. And they don't have any individual owners. Their sole goal is to promote horse racing. And so there is, even in our company, we don't have an individual owner. And so I think that you're going to see a lot of money pumped into the horse racing industry. They're the Horsemen Benevolent Protective Association. So they will make sure that that happens to the extent that they can. But to answer your question, a certain number of races have to be Nebraska bred thoroughbreds.
Thank you, Senator Hurd. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. All right, I just want to, because I'm like Elliot, I don't do this stuff, but I have been in the casino. Online sports betting today in Nebraska, if you do it legitimately, I would go into Warhorse Casino. I know I have to scan my ID when I go in to prove I'm 21. And then once I'm in there, I can just hop on my phone to get on like this DraftKings website to do it, right? Because it's allowed in our casinos
Well,
today.
right now, you have to go to the casinos in Nebraska to make a physical bet.
It's a physical bet, so it's not online even
And
in the
it's not,
casino.
you can't even do it on your phone inside the casino at the moment because our software doesn't
That's what I mean.
allow that.
Okay.
It's very expensive to do that. And if this happens, then there's no point doing that. So we have our own sports betting platform inside the facilities, but we would contract with the large companies that
So
do
that,
this.
because I was like, why do you want to do it? Because right now I have to go in and physically do it, but you've made an arrangement with the
Yes.
online.
So the next bill has a provision that it usually in the states where they do this, since the brick and mortar facilities have already invested hundreds of millions of dollars, they usually are allowed something called a skin, where they can get a mobile betting platform to work with that facility. And so otherwise we would be sitting here probably against it. But since we've partnered with DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM, that would allow us to make sure that our investment in the original facility is protected. And overall, it helps our industry instead of creating competition. So there are partners, so to speak.
So will DraftKings and FanDuel do that with every casino in the state of Nebraska, or
No.
you guys got them first, so you have the Nebraska state?
Well, I can assure you, we got them first. So this has happened in other states. And if you're not with one of the larger entities, then it's like MySpace versus Facebook, right, on the internet. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't Sears versus Amazon and have the old technology. And so we proactively signed up these companies in case this ever happened. And the minute it becomes legal, is our contract with them kicks in and we become partners. We just didn't want to be left out in the cold.
And then one more question. When I'm watching sports, like all over the winter or whatever, I see a ton of ads for FanDuel, DraftKings in the state of, I'm watching Huskers play and it's on that. Why are they advertising here if we supposedly don't have online gambling? Or they're just doing it because they know people are doing workarounds to get to it, or?
I think some of those advertisers are national.
Yeah.
But
It just goes
I also
with
think they have the fantasy football. I used to do fantasy football with my son on DraftKings, and it's perfectly legal to do. And so maybe that's part of it. But really, they're trying to build brand recognition because there's sort of an oligarchy that's developed in this industry. And if you're not one of the top four, make up 90% of the industry. And so it's all about advertising at this point to build market share. And I think that's the standard practice on the internet right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Are there any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you.
Other proponents? If you're a proponent, please move up to the front row so we can hurry this along. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Lowe and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Danny Dorenzo. My first name is spelled D-A-N-N-Y. My last name is spelled D-I-R-I-E-N-Z-O. I'm the Senior Director of Government Relations for GeoComply. I know we've already had a lot of conversation about geofencing and circumventing geolocation checks. I have a whole paragraph in my statement addressing that, but I think I'm actually, in the interest of time, going to save it for questions. Chairman Lowe, hopefully your question still exists and I can put some of your concerns at ease. I spent 25 years in federal law enforcement, investigating all kinds of illegal gambling operations. So I've seen the ugly side of online sports betting. I also spent some time as a regulator of online sports betting in the state of Tennessee, where I live. So I've seen the positive side of online sports betting. I'm going to talk a little bit about our company, and then I'd like to get to the research that we've done on this market here in Nebraska and review those numbers with you. By way of background, GeoComply is a global leader in geolocation technology. The company supports regulated online sports betting, casino, poker, iLottery, advanced deposit horse wagering, and daily fantasy sports operators in 44 U.S. states to ensure compliance with federal and state regulations. GeoComply is an approved geolocation service provider in all states that regulate online sports betting and gaming, including your neighboring states of Iowa, Kansas, Colorado, and Wyoming, just to name a few. Our software is validated by both government and independent testing laboratories. Each day, we process upwards of 20 million geolocation checks. GeoComply's technology and data is used to detect suspicious and illegal activity in addition to maintaining compliance with federal and state law. GeoComply works closely with industry stakeholders to protect consumers against frauds such as identity theft, account takeovers, payments fraud. These are all consumer protections that do not exist in the illegal sports betting market, which is today readily available to Nebraskans. If you can flip to page 3 of the handout that I gave you, you can see in the past year roughly, so July 1st of 23 to June 30th of 24, GeoComply has blocked 4.5 million geolocation checks within the state of Nebraska. That's 4.5 million times a device inside the state of Nebraska was attempting to engage with a legal sports book in another state. Those 4.5 million checks returned to 118,000 unique sports betting accounts. And year over year, that's a 45% growth rate from what we detected from 2022 to 2023 during the same time period. Page 4 of your handout talks about an 84% year over year increase in the number of Nebraskans crossing the border to bet legally. 2023 to 2024, we detected 40,000 border crossings. That's the same sports betting account, same device, crossing the state line in subsequent geolocation checks. As you can see, the vast majority of those, 82%, went to Iowa. The last page, in fairness, I haven't researched every cornfield in the United States, so I'm taking a bit of leap of faith on this. I actually don't know if this is the busiest cornfield in the state, in the US. I suspect it is, but you can see off the first exit, 680 heading into Iowa, there is literally nothing there, and GeoComply processed 500,000 geolocation checks. I would submit that is not organic Iowa sports betting traffic. That is very likely all related to Nebraskans crossing the border to place a legal wager. Happy to yield any questions, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Lorenzo. Are there any questions? Senator Holcroft.
Well, thank you, Chairman Lowe. Thanks for coming in. I'm a little confused because one of the reasons Senator Lowe said we should allow mobile betting is because we're doing it anyway. People are doing it illegally, but that seems to be contrary to what your data shows here as far as being able to block current. I mean, how do you reconcile those two statements?
Yeah, I'm not sure that in my mind that those are contrary statements. So to be clear, the data that I presented you is solely from the legal betting market. GeoComply does not service any of the illegal betting market, right? So illegal betting sites that are available today, if you go on Google right now and search, how do I bet legally on sports in Nebraska? You will see a return of websites that are all illegal black market websites, but can be utilized by Nebraskans today. And frankly, throughout the US, right? It's not just here. We don't service that industry. So the data you're looking at doesn't include any of that, okay? What this does show is that there is a demand for a legal market within the state of Nebraska, Okay, we have 118,000 accounts, sports betting accounts, legal sports betting accounts that were geolocated in the state of Nebraska. Those 4.5 million attempts that I referenced were all blocked by our technology. In other words, you can access the site, but you cannot place a wager because you are not in the confines of a legal betting market. That is why you see such the vast amount of border crossings, right? Those are people that cannot sit on their couch and bet on DraftKings or FanDuel, as you guys referenced, as you all referenced. Instead, they're getting in their car and driving to Iowa, Colorado, Kansas to place that legal wager where they can legally bet. Now, if I can add one more comment to that. To me, that speaks to a demand for a legal protected market, right? If you can sit on your sofa and go to an illegal website and bet, which you can today in Nebraska, yet people are still opting instead to hop in their car and cross the border to bet legally where they have consumer protections in place. I think that speaks to the demand that exists right now in this state for that legal and protected market.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Holcroft. Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so this page here where you've got the two hotspots, just so we have this correct, what this is, as you are able to go and take a look at where you get pings, and this is basically showing you a pocket of activity, and that activity correlates to generally Carter Lake. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. What the visual that you're actually looking at is a heat map. So what it does is yes, sir, it aggregates the number of geolocation checks into a heat map, almost like a weather map.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. I saw you in the crowd, so I wanted to make sure I brought up the geofencing. So Senator Bostar says that they get around geofencing. Has friends that do it. He doesn't do it, but those dastardly friends. What do you say about getting around geofencing?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Chairman Lowe. My first response to that is we are not the only geolocation service provider in this industry. And like any industry, there are good products and there are less good products. So I'm not certain what Senator Bostar is referring to, but what I will say is that our compliance grade technology is vastly different than that commercial geolocation technology I referenced earlier, like Uber uses, right? If you order an Uber is using commercial grade geolocation technology to figure out where you are and where to send that car to pick you up. If you have a fake location application on your phone, which allows you to alter your GPS coordinates, Uber doesn't care. If you want to make it look like you're standing at the Omaha airport rather than out in front of this Capitol building, Uber doesn't care. They're going to send a car to pick you up. If you're not there, they're going to charge you regardless, right? They don't need to dig any deeper to figure out, is this data that we're scraping from the device reliable? Is it trustworthy? We go far beyond that for compliance grade geolocation. We have tens of thousands of rule sets and logic built on the back of hundreds of millions of geolocation checks conducted over the past 10 plus years that pick up everything from VPN usage, any IP address anonymizer. We pick up remote desktop programs, fake location apps, like I mentioned, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bits of software, anything that can allow you to alter your true location. We use multiple data sources to geolocate a device in the gaming industry. We don't rely on IP address. We factor that into the equation, but we use things like Wi-Fi triangulation, GPS triangulation, cell tower triangulation, and Bluetooth technology, and a combination of all of those things to determine the true location of that device. I haven't researched this, but I would submit to this committee, and I'm happy to pull this up and provide it to you at a later date. There is nobody in our system, I hate to use absolutes, I would be fall over backwards shocked if anybody in the state of Nebraska was able to circumvent geolocation with one of our sportsbook partners. We have hundreds of teams globally that is their sole job to update our systems routinely for the latest location spoofing threats. Every time a new device is manufactured, we own it, we test it, we try and hack it. There is the extent that our technology goes to prevent circumvention of geolocation is far beyond any legal requirement that exists today. And again, I think the data that shows people actually crossing the border to wager proves that out. If they could circumvent geolocation, there's no reason to jump in your car and drive to Iowa.
Thank you. And I think that ends our questions for you. So thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you all for your time.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Lowe, members of the General Affairs Committee, thank you for giving me your time. My name is David Anderson, Davidanderson. I'm a third generation horseman. I am the vice president of the Nebraska Horsemen's and Benevolent Protective Association. I have been a member of the Nebraska Thoroughbred Breeders Association for 50 plus years. I've been a licensed thoroughbred trainer in the state for 40 plus years. I've been a witness to some of the greatest racing in this nation in Nebraska. And I was also a witness when that great racing was diminished by the closing of Exarban in Omaha. It was diminished further when we lost State Fair Park, when the fair moved to Grand Island. But I was on board when we bought our property in Omaha and Lincoln to try to keep thoroughbred racing alive in this state. I am happy to say that I am also a witness to the beginning of the resurrection of our great industry from our partnership with Ho-Chunk and the Winnebago people and Warhorse Casinos. I am here to tell you what we are doing with our revenue and what we would do with revenue from mobile sports betting. We have an agreement in place with Ho-Chunk that would give horsemen a piece of every mobile sports bet placed with the two largest providers in the country. This would be an additional infusion of revenue to revive horse racing in Nebraska. When we took over Lincoln in 2015, we only had enough money to build a facility and a racetrack. We did not have enough money to build barns, racing offices, to do the infrastructure, the water, the sewer lines, electrical. Basically, all the things you really need to run a race meet. This lack of infrastructure has limited our ability to have an extended meet of any kind. We are proud to say we are currently building our first barn here in Lincoln, and we will keep adding more barns as we bring in more revenue to build until we have the 900 stalls to run an extended meet. The sole purpose of We Nebraska Horsemen is to promote and conduct live racing. Putting 3CA on the ballot would help us get to our goal much quicker. Thank you. Can I answer any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there questions? Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you hear the reference to Nebraska Horsemen. Explain how big a group is that and what's their primary mission?
The HPBA has an affiliation of over 400 members at this time. They are trainers, owners, and we as the HPBA deal with issues involving racetracks where we run. We have contracts in terms of simulcasting, how the purse structure is set up. So that's what the HPBA is in place for. The Nebraska Breeders is a separate organization that you have to belong to raise Nebraska bred horses, thoroughbred horses.
And as we're looking at the 6 tracks and being able to have a Nebraska bred and born horse in certain races in order to meet the requirements, is it realistic that we're going to have enough horses to do all of that?
We were, in terms of the thoroughbred Nebraska Breeders Association, our numbers dwindled to, from back in the heyday when we had 500 plus foals born every year to just a hair over 30 a couple, 3 years ago until
30.
30. I think it was 35 actually, Senator. That, with the passing of the expanded gambling bill in 2020, that number jumped to over 100. And we do expect with the number of racing days hopefully extended, that number will continue to grow. As the casino revenue that helps fund our purses, as the purses grow, we'll see a larger influx of horses. And I do believe we will have an ample amount of Nebraska breds to fill the races required to run.
All right, thank you.
How long does it take a horse, or what age does a horse start racing at?
We start racing them as 2-year-olds, not here in Nebraska, because we, once again, didn't have enough recently, but around the country, and even this fall in Lincoln, we're going to try to run a 2-year-old Nebraska bred race. And they can race till they're 12. Most of them don't last that long because of lack of ability, injury, age. But you can start running them, in answer to your question, as 2-year-olds.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Anderson? Seeing none, thank you very much for clarifying.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lowe and members of the committee. I'm Lori Thomas, LORI-THOMAS, testify in support of LR3CA. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Nebraska Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association, otherwise known as the Nebraska Horsemen. I oversee the operations of 2 thoroughbred racetracks in Nebraska, which are Horsemen's Park in Omaha and Legacy Downs here in Lincoln, as well as the simulcast operations at both of these facilities. We are a member-driven, not-for-profit organization that exists solely for the benefit of our horseman membership, which, as Dave just said, is made up of men and women who own or train thoroughbred racehorses. And because we don't have shareholders or investors, all of our revenue goes directly back into the racing industry, which primarily supports ag and ag-related jobs. Because of the expanded gambling initiative of 2020, which allowed gaming inside of racetrack enclosures, we have a revenue sharing agreement with our gaming partner, Ho-Chunk Inc. This has allowed us to once again make considerable and much needed investments in our racetrack facilities and infrastructure. We have rebuilt a new 7/8 furlong track here at Legacy Downs. As he also mentioned, we are building barns. First one is being built right now. This year, we are thrilled that we will have our first real live race meet in Lincoln since State Fair Park closed back in 2012. We will run live on September 20th and 21st, 27th and 28th here in Lincoln. We will steadily increase the number of days in both Lincoln and Omaha while we continue to increase purses. With this ongoing casino revenue, we will build more barns, and eventually we'll develop an RV campsite that's right on our property so that our horsemen can live and be near their horses during our extended live meets. That's really important to anyone that has animals. You need to be near them to raise them and take care of them. But perhaps the thing we're most excited about is our future ability to provide additional benevolence, dental care, and primary physician care to the horsemen and the backside employees who are traditionally in an underserved healthcare population. Like many in the ag industry, our horsemen are frequently self-employed, and their work can be migratory in nature. So medical care and health insurance are increasingly difficult to obtain. All of this growth and reinvestment is made possible through the revenue sharing agreement that we have in place. If LR3CA is passed, this additional revenue stream will fall under the same structure that we enjoy now with the bricks and mortar casino. So thank you for considering your support of LR3CA. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Perfect timing. Are there any questions? How many race days are you planning to have this next year?
Lincoln will have 4 in 2024. And next year, we are aiming for 15 in Lincoln and 5 in Omaha. Overall, the entire state, right now, we have to run 53, I believe it is. I always say it wrong. It might be 52, but collectively, the 5 tracks have to run 52 or 53 in order to continue simulcasting. So in 2026, that number jumps up to 5 race days per track. And in 2030, that moves all the way up to 15 race days per track.
It's better for the horses and horsemen if you have a long, a more spread out time period of 10-day or 15-day race period. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So as a horseman, I think you want to bring your horse into a track and be there and train, allow your horses to get comfortable, get used to it. And also just the sheer expense and logistical needs that come with moving horses from stall from one track to the next. So a longer meet is certainly better. And our goal is here to create the old Nebraska horse racing circuit that we used to all enjoy. So you go from one track to another, and then your horsemen stay home. They don't have to go out of state to make a go of it.
All right. Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lowe and members of the General Affairs Committee. My name is Tyler Peterson. That's TYLER PETERSEN. And I am the project manager for construction of the backside racetrack area for the horsemen. I'm an employee of Chief Construction, part of Chief Industries, based out of Grand Island, Nebraska. I've been on the Lincoln project for the horsemen now from the beginning, starting with the total rehab and rebuilding of the racetrack itself a couple years ago. That work now has rolled into building the stall barns on the south side of the track. As Lori mentioned, we have the first one going up currently right now, and then also related structures for them on the rest of the property there in southwest Lincoln. I'm happy to say that I'm also a witness to the beginning of a great place for horsemen to make a living in this community. I've seen the long-term plans for the area, and it looks like my team is going to be pretty darn busy out there for quite some time, along with plenty, of course, the local subcontractors and vendors that we're working with. Their long-range plans, as we understand, are fully build out the backside support area for the care of several hundred horses while they run live. I've been told they intend to run the second week of May after Fawner and eventually run through the summer and into the fall, just as they used to at State Fair Park. They've been keeping us busy for a while now and have been told they intend to keep going as they gather revenue from their casino partnership. If mobile sports betting is put on the ballot, they could then accelerate their plans a bit to begin their live racing sooner than anticipated. They want to build these barns to hold roughly 600 to 900 different horses, structures for offices, administration and viewing, and then also, of course, the infrastructure to support them, such as water, sewer, power, and data, and later aim to build out the RV park so they have a place for horsemen to stay near their animals, as previously mentioned. The Horseman Group made a point of hiring an in-state company to perform their work and want to keep this money turning over within the state. Our company certainly appreciates that, as we always aim to do the same as well by hiring the local subcontractors. I simply wanted to share with you what the horsemen are doing with their portion of the revenue and how it's going to be a great thing for the state of Nebraska. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are there other proponents? Other proponents? Opponents? And if you would like to move up to the front seats, that'd be helpful too, so we kind of have an idea.
Good afternoon. My name is Nate Graz, Nategrazz. I'm the Policy Director for Nebraska Family Alliance. We and the thousands of parents and families we represent are opposed to the bills before you today because we are not going to gamble our way out of our state's property tax problem, not at the expense of our kids and not on the backs of our student athletes. These proposals stand to benefit the gambling industry, not ordinary Nebraskans. That's why you heard from lobbyists for the gambling industry, but there are no parents demanding that their children be exposed to more gambling, that we make it easier than ever for people to gamble directly from their bank accounts without ever leaving their home, or that we encourage strangers to gamble on the athletic performance of our sons and daughters at the expense of their safety and well-being. Sports betting is already legal in Nebraska at the casinos which were supposed to have provided tax relief. And it's the same people who sold voters on casinos with promises of property tax relief 4 years ago who are now trying to force a casino into every home in our state. We heard a lot about money during proponent testimony, but we didn't hear anything about where that money comes from. Nothing about how over 50% of online gambling revenue comes from addicted gamblers, or how personal bankruptcies have risen 28% in states with online sports gambling, and nothing about what's best for kids and families. Online sports gambling is the next public health crisis. It is destroying young people's lives and exposing children to harmful levels of aggressive marketing that is normalizing gambling for kids. Experts continue to warn we are headed into a crisis of gambling addiction and financial ruin among young people. Treatment clinics are grappling with record levels of calls from an alarming rate of younger patients. After legalizing online sports gambling, helpline calls increased 91% in Connecticut, 276% in Massachusetts, 387% in Virginia, and 425% in Illinois, all while illegal gambling increased rather than decreased. Numerous sports betting scandals have rocked both professional and collegiate sports recently, but the bigger scandal is the ease at which state governments are treating their own citizens as an expendable means of state revenue. Gambling is the single most regressive, unreliable, and harmful form of revenue because it exploits the vulnerable, increases social costs, worsens state budgets, and hurts families. But gambling operators don't pay for these costs. Taxpayers do. That's why if there's any property tax relief to be found, it's not in this room. Just more broken promises and broken families. We urge the committee not to advance any of the proposals before you today because state government should protect and rather not exploit its own citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Are there any questions? Yes. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Thanks for coming in, Mr. Gotts. Can you tell me the stat again? It was 20% increase in bankruptcies of states that overall bankruptcy. Just read that again. I was just trying to.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. In states that have legalized online sports gambling, analysis, multiple news agencies have reported there's been a 28% increase in personal bankruptcies.
Just from online gambling.
Correct. In a study
they might have had casinos there before.
Correct. Controlling for other factors in states that have legalized online sports gambling, they've seen a 28% increase in personal bankruptcies.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Hart.
Did you see that illegal gambling percentages did not go down, but actually increased?
Senator, thanks for the question. And that's correct. What we've seen time and time again, despite what the gambling industry says, is then when you bring legalization, you increase access, acceptability, and advertising dramatically. So you increase the number of people who start engaging in the activity, but illegal gambling operators can continue to offer winnings that are tax-free. They can offer different or better odds, and they don't have to play by the same rules as the legal gambling operators do. So it increases the amount of people engaging in the activity and drives more people in the long run towards illegal operators.
Follow. Given that there are numbers that have been suggested in terms of what this helps in terms of tax revenue for things like property taxes, do we have any idea of what portion the gambling businesses themselves make?
Yeah, well, again, I think particularly when it comes to online sports gambling and the way that these bills are structured is that licensed casinos in Nebraska would partner or contract with out-of-state sports betting operators who would get a piece of all of the revenue. So any revenue that the state of Nebraska would expect to collect would be a small fraction of the total wealth that was lost by Nebraska citizens. And I also will point out, we've heard a lot of different figures on how a lot of people are going over to Iowa. Well, in the most recent fiscal year, the state of Iowa collected $14 million in revenue from online sports wagering. They have a population of 3.1 million, and we're also told a lot of that is coming from Nebraskans. So I think any revenue that we would expect to see would be less than that. And simultaneously, we're also going to decrease revenue from the state lottery. You're going to decrease your sales taxes. And again, you're also going to increase the social costs through increases in addiction and bankruptcy and broken families that are paid for by all taxpayers, regardless of whether or not you gamble.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks for the question.
Senator Hart. Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Matt, we had a chance to talk up in the rotunda, and I've had a number of folks. Yesterday was kind of a Congo line of people coming in to tell me, why we're making a good decision or a bad decision. And, the bottom line is there's a lot of folks that are not in agreement with the governor's plan. And I've tried to say, okay, I understand that you don't like what he's doing here, but can you help me to understand how we should do it different? Because we know what's going to happen if we continue doing what we're doing, because for the 8 years we've been in here, we've seen it go up each year, and then sometimes proportionally a lot more than we anticipated. And we tried tweaks to keep it from going up, and then for some reason they moved the lever here, and then what we thought was a good idea didn't turn to be such a good idea. So this is a avenue that they're throwing out there where you could go to revenue where you're not taking it directly away from somewhere else. But is there something that we should have looked at in the way of revenue that would help us wrestle this monster of property tax?
Yeah, it's a great question, Senator. There's a lot of different ideas and proposals, and I would suggest that most, if not all of them, are better than what's in front of this committee today. Because in the long run, when states start relying more and more on gambling revenue, people only have so much money that they can lose. And so once that revenue starts to deteriorate, the state is incentivized not to protect public interest, but to incentivize more citizens to come back to keep gambling and losing more money. There's been national studies that show states that start new revenue streams from gambling see momentary bumps in revenue, but those increases deteriorate often quickly and over time decline and reverse. And so if we're serious about property tax relief, online gambling is not the solution. It will shift the tax burden to people who are addicted and problem gamblers. It will increase bankruptcies and addictions and broken families, and it will create a new set of problems that the state and property taxpayers will have to pay for. I wish there was a silver bullet answer I could give you to that question. If I could, I'd probably be making a lot of money somewhere else if I could answer that question. But I can tell you that these bills are not the solution.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Any other questions? Mr. Cross, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Osborne, always good to see you.
It's good to see you. My name is Tom Osborne, Tomosborne. And I'd like to begin by saying that I'm certainly very supportive of efforts to reduce property taxes. And I appreciate the senator's concern. The only thing I can say is promoting online sports betting will not result in a net benefit to Nebraska taxpayers. There's been considerable research over the years that has shown that gambling revenues produce a net loss of $3 for every one tax dollar received. And that may sound crazy, but let me think through this with you just a little bit. Gambling losses contribute to higher crime rates, bankruptcies, divorces, and negative circumstances for children of problem gamblers. And we work with those kids. And teammates, we've mentored 47,000 kids. And the biggest problem that I see confronting our country today is what's happening to our young people. And I'll guarantee you that child of a problem gambler does not have a very good future. Gambling losses contribute additionally money for gambling. Gambling cannibalizes normal expenditures for housing, clothing, transportation, food, and education. And there's a lot of research that shows that the speed and convenience of gambling is the greatest predictor of gambling addiction. And when you can pick up your phone or get on a computer and bet as much as you want, as quickly as you want, I can guarantee you that there will be increased addiction and increased costs. Online sports betting is particularly damaging as people often bet with their team loyalties to excess. Recently, college athletes in a neighboring state were found to have bet on their own games. This resulted in penalties for the athletes, their teams, and cast a negative specter concerning competitive integrity. And that's the state right next door to us. Finally, having been involved in athletics for much of my life, I can attest to the fact that the most intense criticism and negative circumstances that coaches and athletes have is often not just due to losing on the scoreboard. It often results from not beating the point spread, not meeting such metrics such as number of turnovers, yards lost, yards gained, points scored, etc. The athletic contest becomes less of a sporting event and more of a gambling exercise with a gambler's financial security at risk. And so I would urge you not to advance LR3CA. 30 states have online gambling, I heard today, but there's 20 that haven't. And that doesn't mean that progress means that you just go with the flow. Sometimes you buck the flow. If all of the revenue that I hear going to Iowa was that beneficial, you would think that Council Bluffs would look like Abu Dhabi. It doesn't.
Dr. Osborne, your time has expired. Maybe somebody will ask you a question so you can finish your thoughts. Senator Harding.
Do you have anything you would like to add?
No, I've talked enough. So, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Senator Holdcroft.
Thank you, Chairman Lowe. Thanks, Coach, for coming in. How many games are we going to win this year?
It's not exactly.
We're going to win more. We have a better team.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Holdcroft. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman Lowe. Thank you for coming in. So I have a question, and it's on LB 13, and I think it's on another bill later, and I'm just going to ask it for you next. I don't know if you're going to talk about the other ones. Part of the proposals are to remove, when they put gambling in, you could not gamble on our teams. So you could not gamble on the Huskers. When it's an in-state team, right? Oh, yeah, when they're playing in-state. When they're playing in-state, you cannot gamble on the Husker team. There's I think two bills that remove that stipulation so that you would be able to. Do you have an opinion or on that? And I would like to hear it.
Well, I used to have an unlisted number when I was coaching for about the first 10 years. And every Saturday night, the phone would start ringing. And particularly if we lost. And these were not pleasant conversations. And so I want you to understand that players going back to the dorm, if they fumble or something bad happens, it's not easy. So you're out there, you got 80,000 people watching and a whole bunch more on TV, and you're 18, 19, 20 years old. And you have a lot on your shoulders. And you don't need to have gambling problems exacerbate that problem. Coaches are paid and they can live with it. I did get an unlisted number eventually. I was tired of those phone calls. But I can tell you the negativism gets pretty extreme. And many of you would not realize what it's like.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Coach, if we go back, I mean, all the way back to when you ran for governor, you have been opposed to gambling really from the get-go. Is that fairly accurate?
That's true.
And you've seen how it's kind of morphed with the decisions to go to the racetracks and the casinos. This you see is probably a decision that's going to maybe be more detrimental because of who it's going to impact with the access to phones and computers, or just kind of curious where you are with the amount this is going to impact as opposed to what's already happened.
Well, Senator, it's a lot easier to pick up your phone or sit down in front of your computer and gamble and then try to catch up when they start losing than to walk into a casino or go someplace physically and have to place a bet. And I think you're going to find way more kids. I mean, kids that are in junior high school are pretty good at accessing the internet and using phones, high school kids, and they can run up a debt pretty fast. And sometimes people, the more they lose, the more they try to catch up. And eventually they dig a hole that's almost impossible to get out of. And I see this being very dangerous, particularly for young people.
Thank you. And I apologize for missing our Sunday workouts at Madonna. I'll try and improve in the future, okay?
Well, I haven't been there either, Tom.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Other opponents? Go ahead.
Chairman Lowe, committee members, thank you all for your service to Nebraska, my home state. Senator Hughes, I'm just excited to see you here, a former employee of mine.
John Cruz, right?
Yes, my name is
That's what I
Jonathan Cruz.
thought. I am sitting here going, God, that guy looks familiar. Okay.
JONATHANKRUTZ.
I do tassel.
We had good times. I have a PhD in public policy and administration and an MBA from the University of Iowa. I'm retired from the College of Business and Economics at Boise State University with my research on gambling impacts and policy decision-making, so exactly what we're doing here. It's because of my involvement, I have been led to serve as president of the board of the National Stop Predatory Gambling Foundation. We're active in these kinds of fights in other states, including Georgia, which defeated online sports betting, including Minnesota, which defeated online sports betting, including Alabama, which defeated online sports betting all this year for good reasons. Let me share a few things about gambling that you may not be aware of, and then share why the notion that we're already doing it is inaccurate. We know from studies in Connecticut and Alberta, Canada, that some 70 to 80% of gambling revenue comes from gamblers who meet addiction criteria. They aren't entertained. They aren't exercising free market choice. They are hooked with an addiction that the American Psychiatric Association recognizes as on par with opioids, methamphetamine, and heroin. With online sports betting, gamblers are enticed with $500 risk-free bets that in the small print, they have to gamble away thousands of dollars in order to redeem. And once they have their own money in the system, they're kept gambling by additional free bets, free bonus bets. In fact, 20% of the roughly $2 billion spent this year to promote online sports betting is going to these free bets to lure addicts back to gambling when they try to get away. On these apps, on the phones, you can bet nearly as fast as a slot machine. We're not talking about who's going to win the next game or how many games are we going to win this season. We're talking about, is the next pass going to be a completion? Is he going to drop the ball? Is it going to be a kick? You're betting on in-game activities as fast as a slot machine, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on worldwide sports. Ping pong in Romania, it's constant. And it's all in your pocket. We know from Rutgers University, the top 10% of online gamblers in New Jersey bet an average of 166,000 times in 2019. Betting at that rate indicates an obsession with gambling. And since this house always has an edge, betting that often statistically guarantees those gamblers are losing big. Some can afford it. Most get into financial trouble. We also know from New Jersey that 10% of college students meet gambling addiction criteria, and that young people, including teenagers who cannot gamble legally, are now the #1 demographic calling gambler helplines there. Research from UCLA and USC released earlier this month shows that when online sports betting is legalized in a state, debt, bankruptcy rates, debt collections, auto loan delinquencies increase substantially, while average credit scores decrease. The effects are largest for young men in low-income counties. This proposal doesn't offer free money from nowhere, wonderful as that would be. You can't get gambling tax relief money without creating thousands of new addicted gamblers. I'm going to skip down and just point out the question of, do we have online sports betting already? The evidence offered is that some people drive across the border to bet on their phones, and others, out of curiosity, have tried and failed to sign up. No doubt others are also accessing it illegally. But legalizing and promoting the activity will increase it exponentially. We do not have anywhere near $160 million in online sports betting happening in Nebraska now.
Thank you very much. Your time has expired. If you have something else, maybe somebody will ask a question. But, are there any questions? Senator Hughes.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Did you want to add any more detail that you have? Go for it.
Well, thank you for asking. We also know that when online sports betting was legalized in Massachusetts, illegal online sports betting grew from 4 to 18% of gamblers. Legalizing is going to make revenue drain to illegal sites increase, not end. That was my last point.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Appreciate you being here. Yes, just...
Other opponents? Hello, welcome.
There.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. My name is Loretta Fairchild, Lorettafairchild. Thank you, senators, for all you do to keep the good in life in Nebraska. As you decide what to do with this constitutional amendment and the bill, please keep your focus on who will be the losers, not just on those you wish to help. You have already heard a lot of facts from opponents and a lot of promises from the proponents. Please pay attention only to the realities of the long, sorry history of state-sponsored gambling in Nebraska. The lottery Remember that far back? Came in as a new fun way to solve all of Nebraska's tax problems. If that was true, why are you in session this summer? Senator Ernie Chambers told all of Nebraska over and over about the evils of state-sponsored gambling, and he was correct. But we choose to ignore reality and cling to false promises. Why aren't we horrified that our state government is pushing lottery tickets and more gambling so rich people can lower their own tax bills? Again, when gambling on sports was first brought up, Coach Tom Osborne told us a lot about the grim realities and how hard it made his job. Most Nebraskans believed him and still do. Nebraskans have never voted on sports betting. A small number of individuals have worked for years to push for sports betting, starting well before the casino horse racing group got together. They used what I consider to be devious and deceptive legalese to slide sports betting in without putting the words in front of voters. Please don't continue this farce and deception. You have already received clear facts and multiple reminders of the nature of damage inflicted on families and individuals by addictions. You have the power in your hands to create a new dawn in Nebraska, one that creates a fresh beginning by repudiating sports betting in all forms and under all labels. Please save the legislature's time this session by letting both of these, LB 13 and LR 3CA, die in committee. Please ask lots of questions of the proponents about what makes sports betting a good idea, and who are the individuals inside Nebraska who expect to personally profit from getting it legalized here. Thank you for listening with open hearts.
Thank you, Ms. Fairchild. Are there questions? So you doubt the money that the state that will come in for property tax relief?
That is not the issue. The issue is leadership. I will speak to this again on a couple of the other bills, but the issue is the role of the legislature in saying to Nebraskans and our children, this is a good idea. You are helping the state when you go to the racetrack and now, obviously the proponents are very interested in fostering the casinos and the racetracks. The tribes are doing a good job of managing their money, but none of that is relevant to the role of the state in leadership.
Thank you.
You have an obligation to look past the money and focus on what is beneficial. I'll wait for the next one.
All right, thank you very much. Are there other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are there other opponents?
Been sitting there too long. My name is Glenn Anderson, GLEM, and I guess I take a little different tact today. We analyze this up and down. How can we harvest more money from the taxpayers? And the concern I have is how we're treating the people that are supplying these taxes. In regard to gambling, I truly do not understand the connection that Nebraska has had and will have with gambling. It just doesn't seem like the Nebraska way, not the way to treat its citizens. I would ask, who is your neighbor? And who is your neighbor? we've had the lottery here in our state for years and years. Nebraska operates it and advertises it. It is the less fortunate economically who are the ones most vulnerable to this form of gambling. We know that. So does that seem like a moral standard that we should be utilizing? It seems like an inequitable source of revenue for the state like Nebraska. We have recently initiated casino gambling in Nebraska. Well, it's way fancier than standing in line for a lottery ticket at a gas station. So I suppose it's a different clientele than the lottery. But technology keeps advancing. Now, technology allows us to place an online bet without standing in line for a ticket or even driving across town to the casino. The means of placing a bet is getting more and more efficient. Yet humans still have the same capabilities. This type of gambling is faster and much more addictive, especially addictive to young men from ages 14 to 22. Lives will be ruined, some lives lost to addiction. Yes, speed and efficiency. We are getting better and better at separating money from the pockets of our citizens. But it's a terrible way to raise revenue. Only a small portion of the money lost by the gamblers reaches the state coffers. It is also immoral for the state to be taking advantage of those susceptible to gambling. The people I know, the Nebraska I know, is better than this. We value and want the best for our neighbors. Thank you.
Are there questions? Senator Brewer.
All right, you kind of hit a nerve with me, so we're gonna dive into this. Understand that I think of a lot of the hard calls we've had here, this one is really one of the hardest in many ways, because what a number of ranchers and farmers have told me, and part of the problem right now is Western Nebraska is being depopulated. It's being depopulated because the property taxes are so high they can't pay them, and they're leaving. So my dilemma is I don't like gambling because I've seen how it's impacted some folks, but I'm much stronger in my dislike of seeing the depopulation of my district. And their point is, as much as gambling is horrible, the loss of the property I've had for generations in my family is more concerning to me than the gambling issue. So you kind of understand why it's a hard decision, because I understand what they're saying, and I agree. The loss of the very property that generations have fought to keep because we have taxed them to a point they can't do it anymore is the true challenge that we have in figuring out what right looks like.
Yeah, well, there's been studies prove that especially bringing in the online gambling is a loss to the overall economy. How can this make things better? Is my question. In regard to your question about how we generate more taxes without so much property tax, I certainly don't have an answer.
Well, I want you to just remember that it's not a cold, easy decision, because you're trying to balance a number of things. And if what yesterday's testimony appears to be, and that there seems to be a pretty sizable group that are against the governor's plan, then we're going to have to figure out some solution. We're going to figure out some way to help the property tax, or we'll continue to depopulate. And a lot of that depopulation goes to bigger outfits, bigger ranches that may not even be folks from Nebraska, part of a bigger corporation. And I think that's the doom of the future of Nebraska if we keep moving down this road. So we're at a critical point now where we have to figure out a solution. We have to figure out how do we bring this down so we don't break their backs, and we're able to, have a future for those that are paying property taxes and won't be able to continue if we keep moving forward at the rate we're moving.
I completely agree with your explanation. However, I go back to my original argument that the overall economy is reduced because of the cost of gambling. I mean, a lot of this revenue goes out of state from the casinos. It costs money to build a casino. It costs money for the horses. And there's got to be profit in there. And so a small part of what the gamblers lose, we get for the state of Nebraska. We're losing a lot more money than we're bringing into the state.
If we were to, say, split the decision in the sense that LB 13, which would actually be what would become the law, is set aside and it only becomes an opportunity to have a vote of the people, do you think that would be a reasonable option?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, what you're testifying on right now is LR 3CA. Okay,
Yeah.
so that would mean that's a constitutional vote that they would have during the election, as opposed to the bill, which would go onto the floor and make would be a vote of the senators. So if you take that out and you just give it to the people as a vote, do you think that's a reasonable option to see how they decide?
I don't think that will work from my standpoint.
Okay.
Because it will be marketed as to all the income that the state will get. It will not be marketed in regard to the cost to the taxpayer, to those who become addicted. That will hit the very small part of the marketing program.
I think you're thinking it through, and that's good. That's what I need you to do. So thank you.
Okay, well.
Thank you, Senator Brewer and Senator Anderson, or Mr. Anderson. You didn't mean to demean you there.
Thank you.
Other opposition? And after this LRCA, we will take a short comfort break for about 15 minutes.
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm Pat Lunger. I'm the Executive Director for the past 29 years of Gambling with the Good Life. We've opposed any form of gambling for all that time, except that which was already established before 1995. But what we've learned is that gambling is the most regressive, unreliable, and harmful form of state revenue, because it exploits the poor, the financially desperate, and it increases the social costs.
Could you please say and spell your name, Pat?
Pat, P-A-T-L-O-O-N-T-J-E-R, pronounced Lunger. It eventually increases social costs, it worsens state budgets, and it deceives the public, and it hurts families. With online sports betting, people can gamble directly from their bank accounts without ever leaving their homes or having any human interaction. The results for children have been devastating. Sports betting severely harms children, and it will radically change the way that children consume sports. Research shows that in states with online sports gambling, the high frequency of sports betting advertising has normalized gambling for the kids. Calls to the gambling addiction hotlines have more than doubled, and bankruptcies have risen 28%. The ultimate goal, it's like the camel's nose under the tent, when we got the casinos, is not sports betting. It's not that big of a revenue. It's to have the casino on your phone. that's, that's their hidden goal. The threats to the integrity of competition and harassment of athletes have increased dramatically. We've all seen results of the Iowa colleges and how young athletes got caught up in the sports betting scandals and it ruined their lives. And I think that's what Tom Osborne is primarily interested in, is how, and he expressed that today with the phone calls that he got as coach and the rest of the kids, how they're pressured. You can imagine what this will do if sports betting gets online. Nebraskans deserve real solutions, not proposals to expand gambling on the back of our coaches, student athletes, and our children in general. Gambling with the Good Life has fought successfully to prevent expanded gambling for 25 years. In 2020, when we lost that battle, after our opposition had spent $7 million to promote the fact that there would be property tax relief, which is a lie. We're now facing 6 casinos, and the lie is being told once again, and we're asking that you don't believe the lie. National statistics show that for every $1 a state gains from gambling revenue, it's going to cost them $3 in social costs. This doesn't even take into account the heartache that the losers face and the devastation to families and businesses. We need time for the new casinos to be operating and studied before we add even more gambling to the state. It's way too soon to expand before we know the facts. 2 more sentences. The state has a duty to protect its citizens, not prey upon them. So we ask that you would vote against all of these expanded gambling bills that are going to come before you today. To Senator Brewer, it's a very small percentage compared to what we need for that property tax. I admire the governor for trying as hard as he is, and for all of you, we're all thinking, how can this be done? Because it's so necessary. But this particular mention of sports betting on the phones is just going to be a tiny percent of what you need to solve this problem.
Thank you, Ms. Lunger. Are there any questions?
Just a quick comment. You realize that you cut the coach off and you let her just keep on rolling there. So I see where your priorities are.
I always honor the ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Any other opposition? Seeing none, those in the neutral.
Chairman Lowe, members of the General Affairs Committee. I am David, D-A-V-I-D, Geier, G-E-I-E-R, Director of the Nebraska Problem Gambler Assistance Program. My employer is the Nebraska Commission on Problem Gambling. I'm testifying today neutral because that's the official position that the Commission on Problem Gambling has taken regarding bills that would expand gambling activity in our state. The Commission does not see taking a position on these issues, pro or con, as within its scope. But what we do see our scope is to gather the facts about what's going on in our state. What you have in front of you is a tabulation of some of the data that we've accumulated in the past 2 years. We are particularly concerned about the trajectory. Rates of addiction are going up dramatically. So we're facing a fiscal problem in our little program. I don't envy you the tax issues that you have to wrestle with here. I've seen it referred to as a three-legged stool, but it seems to me more like a Rubik's Cube, trying to figure out how to make all the pieces fit together. Addiction to gambling comes in here somewhere with all the bills that are before the legislature now during this session. LB 1 has several sections concerning gambling as well. As you balance all the different interests that are at stake, keep in mind that the revenue to our program is the only one that deals with the problems that I've outlined for you today. All the rest is talk. Rates of fiscal assistance to our program vary from 1/10 of 1%, 6/10 of 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, all over the map. We hope that you can find a way to squeeze out as many percentage of gambling revenue to help our program as possible. Good luck. I'm not betting on that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Guyer. Any questions? Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman Lowe. Thank you for coming in, David. Can you just give us, like, how many staff you have, how you just
Staff,
the basics of
there are
what-
two of us.
There's only two.
Two of us to run the program
Okay.
from the central office here in Lincoln. We're a contracting office, so we contract with counselors around the state.
Okay.
In fact, there's been a really significant increase in interest. Mental health practitioners have suddenly awakened to gambling as an issue. So we're now up to about 35 or 40 counselors, increasing almost monthly around the state, operating in about 25 locations. We're just adding them. I can't keep the list in my head, but there's a significant increase in understanding and interest. So the two of us have to juggle all this. Train them, certify them, put them under contract, pay them, all of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other neutral testifiers. Director Ricketts, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Casey Ricketts, CASEY-RICKETTS, and I'm the Interim Executive Director for the Nebraska Racing Gaming Commission. I'm here to testify in the neutral position. As always, the commission wants to protect the integrity of the racing gaming industry. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? You're getting off easy.
All right, well, thank you guys. Have a
Thank you
good
very much.
afternoon.
Other neutral testifiers. Last call. Seeing none, that ends LR 3CA. There were 5 proponents, 30 opponents, and 1 neutral. We're going to take a short break now.
Can I close?
He's gonna close.
Oh, you're going to,
I threw you off.
oh, come on.
I
Yes,
look-
Senator Bostar.
I know
please
you might
close.
not be the biggest fan, but thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the General Affairs Committee. I don't have the opportunity to get in front of you all that much, and I appreciate every time and every chance I do. I sort of like I said at the beginning, right? I'm not here to convince anyone that gambling is good. I'm not here to convince anyone that gambling, that they should like it or that they should support it, or that it doesn't come with problems. I'm here to say that it's already happened. And we're not going back. We're not. It's happening. People are doing it. We heard about stats of the increasing rates of services being provided by the outreach organizations, by bankruptcies, by things like that. People are doing it. People have access to it right now. And I think it's fair to lament that, to think that that's really unfortunate. But it doesn't change that it's true. There was an argument about the amount of revenue available. This is talking about Iowa, right? Iowa, it was said Iowa got 14 million in tax revenue, and they're a larger state than we are, so how could we possibly get more money? Well, I think the piece that was left out of that, I think intentionally, was Iowa has a tax rate of 6%. We have a tax rate of 20. So if you do all the math, our number is actually, that is fairly consistent with what we say we're going to get. You know, addiction is a horrible thing. There are challenges within my own family. When it comes to drugs, a lot of the root opportunity for people's addiction came out of the opioid crisis, the overprescribing of narcotics. Ultimately, when access to those became more challenging, people didn't stop, right? Because just taking away the primary thing they want or not letting them have the thing that they really want doesn't actually stop it, right? It takes treatment, it takes care, it takes support, it takes a lot of things. But they moved on to heroin and fentanyl and everything else, right? For folks that fall through the cracks, that don't have the support, don't have access to treatment. I think it'd be easy to just assume that if we don't have the main sports betting operators here in Nebraska, that, well, and people can't do it. But again, they can, they are, they're doing it a lot. I mean, there's a lot of folks that didn't want to come here and sit in this chair on the record in front of all of you and talk about how they participate in sports betting. I asked a lot of them because I think it would be instructive. But I think for sensible reasons, they don't want to do that. That being said, I think they absolutely would be happy to talk to any of you. So keep that in mind. Let me know if that's something that would be of value. It was also said that this is not the Nebraska way. I don't know. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it isn't. I think a really good way of determining whether or not Nebraska wants something is let them vote on it. That's democracy. That's what we got here. There are places that do government differently, where democracy is not part of their equation. And thankfully, that's not what we have here. So we have the opportunity to ask the state what they would like. I think we should. I think we should give them the question. We are not the ones deciding on whether or not we are going to have sports betting. The people of Nebraska are. And if we really think that it will not come to Nebraska, that we will not get to the point where that question is being posed to the voters on the ballot, fair enough. But if we think it will, and we're just delaying it, and therefore delaying any of the economic impact we could have, keeping in mind that Nebraskans are already participating, then that part doesn't make sense to me. That's the part that I don't really get. Anyway, we'll have another bill. We can continue the conversation. I do appreciate the participation in the dialogue. The people who don't like sports betting, they're not wrong. They're just not. It's fair. But it's just, I don't know how much it's up to us. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bostar. Are there any questions in his closing? Thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing LR3CA, and we will see everybody back here at 10 till 4.
10 to 4.
Can you tell me the online comments again?
Oh, the online comments were 5 proponents, 30 opponents, and 1 in the neutral.
Okay, thanks.
See you soon.